This is the GeForce RTX 3060 gaming laptop. It has an NVIDIA RTX 3060 GPU, 16 gigabytes of DDR5 memory, and an AMD Ryzen 9 processor. And it was provided by our fantastic sponsor, the one and the only Best Buy. This right here has been my workhorse choice ever since I got it. The build is excellent, the weight is really solid, and I enjoy the aesthetic quite a bit. Not to mention the fantastic specs and the new NVIDIA DLSS software. If you haven't used it yet, the NVIDIA DLSS, or Deep Learning Super Sampling Technology, allows it to tap into a deep learning neural network and use AI to boost frame rates and performance across the board, as well as graphical increases. This Asus gaming laptop is a champ because NVIDIA GeForce RTX GPUs can utilize DLSS technology and give games a speed and performance boost with uncompromised image quality for the ultimate gaming experience. And if you want to use it for yourself, all you need to do is look for the NVIDIA GeForce RTX badge on your device that you can see on screen now to know that it is optimized for DLSS. Truth be told, this laptop right here is the strongest one I've ever owned. This thing is honestly a champ. I play a wide variety of games on it in a wide variety of locations, and it handles all kinds of games, whether they're very graphically heavy or just very processor heavy, super easily because of all of that DLSS tech. And it's also due to the big help of Best Buy, which, if you're somehow not familiar, they are the leading brand in a myriad of tech products, and I shop there like genuinely pretty regularly. They provided me with this Asus gaming laptop, and if you want to check out the laptop, utilize the new NVIDIA DLSS technology, or take a look at all of Best Buy's industry-leading services and products, or perhaps maybe a little bit of all three, you should check out the description and the link down there. Thank you very much, Best Buy, for sponsoring me, and let's go ahead and get started with the video. Hello, everybody. My name is Bricky, currently serving at 10 to life for taking eating ass literally. This is the first video of me standing. It may not be the first video I release of me standing, but it is the first video of me now standing for a thing instead of sitting down like normal. We're advancing. We're advancing ourselves now. I welcome you to another program, which is called Bricky Mildly Rants About a Thing That Was on His Mind and That You Get to Deal With. The latest episode being on Joel from The Last of Us, a video that you can see here. You see, I don't have any impressions that I'm a particularly potent content creator. By that I mean, I don't think I can formulate my opinions or explanations as well as many others in my field. I don't have the intelligence of a Dan Olson or a Joseph Anderson, nor do I have the script writing skills of Seth or Racevic, all channels I thoroughly enjoy. I'm working on it, of course. Stagnation in content is a pretty good way to kill a channel, but I don't want to pretend I'm somebody I'm not. I like the spot I've kind of carved out for myself. Just enough insight to be more than a normal review, and just enough memes to keep people engaged. However, if I do pride myself on one thing, I think I have some pretty okay rants. If Warhammer has taught me anything, it doesn't matter what the subject matter is. If you yell and you scream with enough gusto, enough power in your chest, someone is going to find you extremely persuasive, either as an ally or an enemy. So when I see an opportunity to rant, I plan to take it. Let's talk about the completely objective concept of video game balance, fun, and the interaction between the two.
The game is fun.
So when we discuss these concepts, I want to talk about fun. You know, this is going to be a high and mighty video when I'm trying to define fun this early into the video, but fun is obviously not something that's easily defined, and it can mean a lot to different people. Whether it's a satisfying gameplay loop, a sense of accomplishment, a narrative that you really enjoy, unlocks, etc., your fun differs. But I want to go deeper than that. I want to think about the sense of identity that a game or say choices in the game invoke. Say you're playing Overwatch and you main someone like Tracer. The fun, the identity of Tracer is to be a pest, to move extremely fast, be tricky, do a bunch of damage at close range, be hard to hit, dip in and dip out. That's the Tracer identity. In Titanfall 2, the Legion Titan is a gigantic off gun attached to a robot, and the identity of that Titan is sustained powder fire. And while it may not be the most effective Titan in the game, it's still the feeling you get. This can be brought down to an even simpler level. Guns in COD even have identities. The fun you create is invoked entirely entirely by what you want the tools of the player to do. The problem, exacerbated by multiplayer games specifically, is that in order to invoke a certain feeling of fun, a certain identity, sometimes that will lead to some extremely aggravating cases of poor balance.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
I don't consider myself very good at Overwatch, but I got my way to Masters or whatever because I loved playing Roadhog with his busted hook. That character's identity was on full display as a massive off tank that punished those out of position exceptionally hard so long as I had the proper aim, or whatever you'd refer to as proper aim with Roadhog. Now, I'm not saying his nerf wasn't justified, because it was. The hitbox was way too problematic overall. It led to a ton less fun on the other side, the other team. But when you decide instead to create Bridget afterwards, which, yeah, just maybe you went a little too hard with the identity part of that one when you chose to identify her with the pronouns war and crime. But despite that, creating a good character identity is important as it affects the gameplay loop and lets players gravitate towards things that are not part of their playstyle. This will create, while maybe not balanced games, fun games. However, in the pursuit of balance, sometimes that identity you created will be compromised. I think the nerfs that Roadhog received were justified and didn't really ruin the character. He is still who he is, as they just reined in the jank. But my heart goes out to the fucking Doomfist fans out there. I don't pretend to know how to play that man or anything, but I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. What have they done to Doomfist? There was a problem with him, with Doomfist, and how he operated in the game, and changing him may have solved that problem, but it gutted his identity in the process. Shit, let's walk down the dark, damp stairs into the olden days of League of Legends. Aurelion Sol was a baller space dragon with an extremely unique kit when he first came out, utilizing rotating stars of various ranges to deal damage. He was a squishy mage that relied on being close, but not too close to your enemy, and finding ways to maintain that distance. It was a super weird concept, but a fun one. Problem was that despite him not being incredible overall, pro players were able to abuse him to such a degree where even though the majority of the population couldn't use him effectively, it made him catch some nerfs. But instead of maintaining that feeling of playing Aurelion Sol, they gave him a massive rework that now makes him feel like just a shell of what he was. The fun that we had with the identity of Aurelion Sol was axed.
One of the goals was to enhance his dragon theme. And what do dragons do? Well, they breathe fire, of course.
I find that more and more games will have balancing problems of some sort, and the balancing pass tends to kill the identity that made it fun in the first place. Another example, because I'm still mad about it, the Tyranids in Warhammer. They had an ability revolving around their adaptability. That's like their thing. The ability to adapt to the enemy they're fighting and have it shore up their weaknesses. But because Tyranids were too powerful, they forced you to have it written into your list before you even saw your opponent's army. You know, so you can no longer adapt to your opponent. That's literally the point of Tyranids, and it really wasn't the reason why the faction was crushing people, because they still are, but they lost that fun Tyranid style identity to them. Perfect balance in a game is always something that's desired, but I feel like that it might not actually be a good thing. I want to argue for the opposite. Obviously, removing any major outliers is important, things that are so game-breaking that need to be hotfixed, but the essence of an unbalanced game, I think, makes it in a way more fun, so long as the identity is preserved. For example, let's go back to Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 is one of the best FPS games of all time. It's a gem of a title. It is not balanced in the slightest, and not in the like, oh, some of the best games of our childhood, Modern Warfare 2, weren't balanced at all, but like back then you can kind of get away with worse balance because times were different. Titanfall 2 is not that old, and it is not balanced. Argue to me that this game is balanced, and I'll respond with a Jesus photo speaking the words of Stimcar and Monarch Titan. But if we take, let's say, Big Daddy Scorch, objectively the worst Titan in the game, and yes, you know I'm right, I don't care how much you love him, he's objectively the weakest, he still serves a function. Scorch is area denial and short-range burst damage. It's really hard to get it in, fundamentally, because in a game like this, there'll just be certain maps and scenarios that are very long range, very open, and he just won't get his damage in. But he wasn't changed to suit those means. His kit wasn't adjusted in a way to make up for that weakness. He was given buffs here and there to help him out, but he is still fundamentally Scorch and had a die-hard group of players exactly for that reason. Despite being the worst Titan still in the game, he wasn't worse by a massive margin, and he was still incredibly fun, and he maintained his identity without having to massively rework the character of the Titan, whatever. How about another option? A metagame can be created entirely due to the aspect of imbalance. Top tier weapons or characters reign supreme, which can change the landscape of the game itself. This leads to unintended side effects, like certain weapons or characters that normally weren't that good finding a place because they are a counterpick against that OP thing. My favorite gun in Destiny 2 is Malfeasance. It's a gorgeous hand cannon with a trait where 5 consecutive shots will detonate 5 explosives attached to them. Now, this naturally makes it pretty good for some PvE scenarios, but pretty bad for PvP, where enemies tend to die far before those 5 shots. However, Warlocks use their ability called a Rift to give them a little bit of extra damage or healing, and they would put on this fancy helmet called the Stag. The Stag would make them significantly tankier in that Rift and allow them to take fights that were overall just, they really should not have taken those fights. They would have died much easier. I found a place for Malfeasance dealing with those Stag Warlocks. The meta evolved further where tons of overshields utilized by Titans were prevalent. Malfeasance was an excellent choice against them, who would get overly greedy and then find themselves insta-gibbed by the explosions. Tons of roaming supers making their way into the game. I use it to deal with them from range. Build crafting, both in co-op and competitive games, can wildly change due to imbalance, and that keeps the game feeling fresh and promoting discussion. They say that all press is good press, and when there is a rallying hatred for something overpowered in a game, or at least discussion around it, the game is firmly in people's minds. Hell, memes are created regarding that imbalance, which keeps people talking. If everything's the same and perfect balance is achieved, I think it just ends up being a bit boring to think about. Malfeasance is a pretty mediocre PvP pick, but it has its place and it has its identity, and for that I love it more than any other meta weapon. Same reason why I love like Cerberus +1, because in a crazy hectic gunfight, yeah, your time to kill might be something specific, but that's a perfect time to kill. What if you're missing shots? I got too many barrels. I'm not going to miss my shots. Now, despite all of this, limits should obviously be put in place. There are dials that can be tweaked with all values in games, and they should be if it helps achieve a better semblance of balance overall, so long as they don't step on the toes of what made it fun in the first place. Now, I'm sure right now in your mind, right, you could think of a time in insert game here where the thing you loved had to get nerfed or buffed in some way that ruined why you loved it. My poor Stockholm Syndrome League of Legends fans can think of many a reworked champions that probably go into this list. And hey, if you want to tell me about some of them, please, you know, put it down there, you know. I know this has been sort of like a poorly formulated topic, but I worry that people online push changes quicker than should be made. Yet no game developer in the history of working has ever said, yeah, guys, I think we should definitely make our game less fun so it can be more balanced. Nobody ever says that. Everyone who makes games know that the fun is number one. But I can imagine sometimes when the online discourse is just fervent, when every tweet is hit with a nerf X instantaneously, level heads might weaken, and a quick fix is implemented just to get those people to shut up. I don't think they know that's what's happening, but I know I've been subconsciously swayed by idiots on the internet before. You are not immune to propaganda. I just have been like thinking about all the past League reworks when I used to play. Look at all those that landed and all those that didn't. It made me realize that almost all the games I play or used to play are pretty unbalanced, like Destiny, League, Overwatch, Titanfall, Dead by Daylight, For Honor. Like my whole retinue of titles struggled with balance a ton. Some kept their identity and some didn't. And figuring out the differences is really fun. Okay, so I'm sorry, I got on Fortnite a bit ago. Someone told me about the no build and I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And it was actually pretty good. I was kind of surprised that how decent no build was. But there was the Dragon Ball, oh god, how does that one guy say it? That like Dragon Ball Kamehameha thing was so ludicrously unbalanced. It was nearly an insta kill and it's just so dumb. But I remember it being just an absolute blast with how stupid and fun it was that I kind of didn't really care. In a weird way, like having a boogeyman is almost fun. A character or a gun in a game that everyone can kind of rally against and hate on. I mean, it's not good when they just hate it on the person who's using it, but it can feel sometimes kind of nice to have that like connective glue in the community. Shit, I look back at like For Honor and I think about like Orochi, the little weeaboo samurai guy, and the stigma that went with him, and it was just kind of fun in a, you know, weird way. I don't know. It was enjoyable. Hell, I mean, Mass Effect, right? Mass Effect 3 even found a way to fix this without literally adjusting anything. In the third game's multiplayer, there were absolutely maps and enemies that were best for farming credits. Firebase Glacier was really small, and the Geth were the easiest of the enemies. It was really easy to just load up Geth, load up Firebase Glacier, and speedrun through it. But instead of saying like buffing the Geth or changing the Firebase Glacier map, they just gave you incentives to go random. You got extra experience if you chose random map and extra experience if you chose random enemy. Why make these massive changes to all that stuff when you can just say, hey, just don't pick them. Pick random. We'll give you more stuff for it. Sometimes just incentivizing people to use other things is all you need to help adjust the metagame. Even if the metagame is Mass Effect 3's multiplayer economy. There are die-hard players in tons of different kinds of games that are entirely focused on playing the fun, mediocre pick. And if you try too hard to make that fun, mediocre pick something it's not, you might make a more balanced game, but you make a less interesting one. And some of the best games out there are not balanced at all. And as far as I'm concerned, a massive emphasis on sticking to an identity, first and foremost, is more important than any level of balance you can achieve in the game. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I know it's a bit of a random one, but I just wanted to regurgitate my thoughts just out into the ether and discuss this kind of stuff. Also, I hope the new setup, me standing up, isn't too bad overall. I mean, hopefully it's all right, but you know, I'm still working out the kinks in it, you know. There's just some light stuff here and there. And a quick question from Mega talking about all the different kinds of Audible sponsorships and, you know, audiobooks and books I've read. And they asked me, what book is my numero uno? What's my favorite book of all time? You know, I think I'd have to go with the Night Lords trilogy. Yeah, I think they took my spot as my favorite books of all time. But if you were going for a non-Warhammer book, I'd say probably Misery, the Stephen King novel about the artists and everything. Well, they're always some kind of art. You know what I mean? The one, you've probably seen the movie, maybe here and there. Misery's really good. Ooh, The Stand, also Stephen King. The Stand is incredible. They always try to make a TV series out of that, and it's always awful. So one day they'll make a good one, but The Stand, Misery, and the Night Lords trilogy, best books. Thank you all for watching so much. I will see you for some more videos throughout the holidays. Bye-bye.
Come on. Obviously, you're a skater.